My name is Linda Lorelle, and I'm asking you to have the courage to listen with an open mind to all of our voices, because our voices matter. Hi, everybody. It's Linda Lorelle, and this is Our Voices Matter. It's good to be with you again. It has been a while since we've offered you a new episode, and the world has changed quite significantly in the last couple of months. I've been thinking long and hard about how to have a constructive conversation about the Israel Hamas war. I learned of an organization called Givat Haviva in Israel, where Jewish and Arab Israelis work together toward a shared society. The organization's vision is anchored in the principles of mutual respect, trust, pluralism, and intrinsic equality between citizens, with a focus on education, language instruction, culture, and art. For the last 74 years, Givat Haviva has conducted its work on the ground in Israel, promoting educational programs and encounters, and expanding public dialogue between Jews and Arabs, one person at a time. That work became immensely more challenging and more important on October 7th. The two leaders of Givat Haviva have their hands full on both a professional and personal basis as they navigate the ever-changing dynamics of war, unfolding moment by moment, even as you will see during this episode. My hope is that this conversation will provide you with thoughtful perspective and a glimmer of hope. Here now, my conversation with Michal Sela and Mohammed Darawshe. Michal and Mohammed, thank you so much for taking the time to share your stories with the Our Voices Matter podcast audience. You are joining us from Tel Aviv, and I so appreciate you taking the time, given all that you are dealing with right now with the war. Michal, as the leader of the organization, Givat Haviva, would you please give our audience a little bit of an understanding about what you do and why what you do is so incredibly important at this moment in time?
Sure. First of all, hi, Linda, and thank you so much for inviting us today. So Givat Haviva is the largest shared society organization in Israel. When we say shared society, we mean a Jewish and Arab shared society within Israel. So everybody knows that there are Palestinians living in the occupied territories and in Gaza, but also there's Palestinians or Arab citizens of Israel living in Israel. And since 1948, there were citizens of Israel until today. So it's 20% of the population. Every fifth Israeli is an Arab or a Palestinian citizen. And in Israel, I think it's our largest challenge as a society, right? Because it is a Jewish and democratic state. But from the beginning, it was obvious that the democratic side is supposed to include, of course, everyone. However, it's not always the case. So we know that the Arab society is suffering from inequality, and also there are problems in the relationships between Jews and Arabs within Israel. That's what we do. We think that in order for Israel to be a prosperous democracy, we need to work on these relationships. We're doing it through education, culture, and language for the last 74 years.
And Mohammed, you are the director of the center. So tell us what your role is as the director.
Actually, I'm a director of strategy at Givat Haviva, which basically is trying to work with Michal on designing what are, how to keep ourselves fit for the mission. At the end of the day, we are running after a changing target, a moving target. The field of Jewish-Arab relations is affected by the Middle East tension, by the situation that is happening around us, the ecosystem that we live in. And in addition, the reality on the ground between Jewish and Arab citizens sometimes goes through tense periods, and we need to pretty much invent the wheel sometimes every year or sometimes every month. And my role is basically to look at the programs and see how suitable they are to reality in order to be not just doing good work, but doing effective work. So I'm partnering with Michal and the rest of the team. Michal is the CEO, is leading the whole operation, and my role is to be the second brain next to her.
Okay, so tell me an example of some success stories, a success story that that you feel strongly exemplifies the work of Givat Haviva pre the current war. So in previous years, what was the progress that you were making? How was this shared society able to make a tangible difference in the lives of Jews and Arabs in Israel? Mohammed, can you answer that for me? Can you start off?
Yes, I mean, one of the most tangible programs is the actual results of Jewish and Arab youth that come to Givat Haviva. We bring few thousand kids every year to our campus. In more than 93% of the cases, this is the first encounter those kids have ever had with the other. They come with a very high level of stereotypes and sometimes even racist views against each other. And racism rate among the general society within the Jewish and Arab community could reach 60-65%. While our intervention, once the kids spend about 3 days at Givat Haviva and sometimes even less, we're able to reduce racism rate to even lower than 20%. Which tells you that engaging in peace education can get you the results. We know, though, that our intervention sometimes has problems because kids go home and the returning home syndrome kicks in. Their surrounding environment tries to pull them back. So we re-intervene by identifying the proper people around them in their surrounding, and this is mostly their teachers. And now we're focusing more on teacher training so that the teachers can be part of the ecosystem. And this led us also to start engaging in cross-sector teachers, placing Arab teachers in Jewish schools and Jewish teachers in Arab schools, so that we don't only wait for the kids to come to us. We've seen few successes in this area. Another area that we've been engaged in is to encourage Israeli universities to take more Arab students to study in Israeli universities. When we started consulting with the universities in 2003 on this topic, the percentage of Arab students was only 3.5%. Today, it's almost 20% of the student population.
So if I understand correctly, you have a multi-pronged approach, your program. So you sometimes bring students to campus, but then you're also doing outreach to other organizations and universities. Is that correct? Am I correct in saying it that way?
Correct. I mean, we're not just we're not just waiting for people to come to us. We also go outwards and try to reach the schools and try to affect the school environment and the community environment, and not just wait for people that maybe their teachers or they themselves like the work. We don't want to just target the peace community. We want to target the general community, and that will be better success if we are able to target people with different perspectives from the starting point.
And when students come to the campus to immerse themselves in your program, typically how long are they there?
So it depends.
We have different programs.
A variety of programs. We have
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So we have short programs of around like 5 sessions, and the session in Givat Haviva will take like 2 days or 3 days. But we also have very long programs of almost 2 years, when 2 classrooms, one from a Jewish schools and one from an Arab school, will work together, and their teachers also will work together for 2 whole years. This program, for instance, is almost 30 years old. So we now have principals of schools that used to attend that program and inviting us to their school because for the school they're managing, right? Because it was such a profound experience for them as students.
So over these many years, 74 years since the beginning of Givat Haviva, you've made significant progress. And now we are in the middle of the Israel Hamas war. Michal, I'm going to ask you this question first, and then Mohammed, I'd like for you to chime in. How have things changed in terms of the dynamic of the two of you working together and doing your work and ensuring that you're able to continue your mission under these extremely difficult, challenging, horrific circumstances across the board?
Okay, so it affected every inch of our work and also our ability to work together, right? So first of all, our work in the field. I think that, first of all, October 7th was a shock for everyone, for all Israelis, Jews and Arabs. In addition, I think it's important to remember that Jews and Arabs were murdered there, and not only Jews, but Israelis were murdered there. And right after the first shock, we've witnessed two things. One, the level of anxiety in the two societies, on the Jewish side, of course, but also on the Arab side, got really, 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 really high. The tension got really, really high. What we also saw, and it was, I wouldn't say surprising, but still very alarming, is that we started to experience pressure from top down, right? From the coalition, from the government. And we started to see that in a way, there are people in the coalition trying to cause violence, right? Starting to poke the Arab population again and again, starting to arm the Jewish population, the civil Jewish population, which is something that is not common in Israel. It's something new. And we started to understand that we can't work with youth right now because all of the schools were closed, right? They only opened like 3 weeks ago. So everything was closed, everything was shut down. Everyone were in shock, super afraid, and the tension was like at the highest level that I can remember. And we understood that we need to work with regional and local leaders so they can know each other. So Jewish and Arab local leaders from like near communities that live near each other. And we understood that we need to work with them and we need to make them, first of all, know each other, have the same, target to prevent violence, to take the flame down, right? The flames down, and to do whatever they can to calm their people. So that's what we did in the first week. We just brought regional leaders to Givat Haviva for sessions to get to know each other, to start WhatsApp groups and all kind of different ways of communication. And it worked. In addition, what we did is we have a lot of connections with different national leaders in the Arab community and the Jewish community. And we started to talk to them and say, like, you have to say something. You have to calm down the people. And you have to understand that now we're also fighting for our lives within Israel. Because if violence will occur now in Israel, first of all, it will be very, very hard to handle. And second of all, how will we ever be safe here if what Hamas did will tear apart everything we achieved in the last let's say 2 decades in the sense of relationships between Jews and Arabs within Israel.
Mohammed, from your perspective, what can you add to what Michal just said?
Well, I mean, I've been in this field for many years, so I always try to analyze and look at this whole situation from a historic point of view, and as such also try to position ourselves in the right engagement way. I mean, we've gone in Jewish Arab relations, we've gone through 3 stages, and it seems that we need to go into a 4th stage that we haven't even invented yet. We used to get involved in what we called coexistence, which is more of social contact and focusing on the humanity of each other and enjoying each other's just social company. And that was the work of Givat Haviva for many, many years. And then about 23 years ago, we moved into more dialogue to talk about the problems, to allow the elephant in the room, and to talk also to dare agree to disagree, and focus on the issues that also create some kind of distinction, whether it's an identity or narrative or a comprehension of the state around us, and the concept of peace. What does peace for an Arab citizen mean is not necessarily the same as it is for a Jewish citizen. When we talk about, we use the term shared society today because we think that coexistence is not good enough. We need to incorporate equality into it. And the combination of good relations and equality, the product ends up being the term shared society. With time, we also started focusing on mutual interests. And today, I'm not sure if these three theories need to be followed on the same level. The challenge that is very significant and even very severe. The level of confidence in each other's capacity as a collective. The Jewish citizens and the Arab citizens are very suspicious of each other, are very cautious of each other, are very afraid of what would be the next stages in Jewish-Arab relations. Yes, things are relatively still under control. We are not seeing dramatic confrontations between Jews and Arabs, but there are lots of negative things happening, especially conducted through by the leadership of certain politicians that might have extreme damaging impact to Jewish-Arab relations.
How would you say that the temperature has changed from the first week after October 7th to now, as we're taping this today, almost 2 months later?
I personally think that things are actually getting a bit worse. We're accumulating a lot of damage. We're accumulating a lot of fear. I think many people in the Arab community feel oppressed. And in the Israeli Jewish community, I think there's also building fear that is also accumulated. It got triggered on October 7th, and because the war is not over, their sense of safety and security is not reinstated yet. And to establish relations between citizens, especially that, as I said, we're accumulating incidents that altogether give you a bad feeling. But at the same time, we are succeeding in not crossing the line to move to civilian confrontations. Most of the confrontations are now by certain government agencies versus Arab citizens. But I feel the tension building up. The sense of fear in the Arab community is building up. And the distribution in the last 10 days of tens of thousands of weapons in hands of Israeli Jewish civilians is very scary, because those guns are targeted potentially against Arab citizens. These are not to join the fight against Hamas or against Hezbollah in Lebanon. These are in the hands of fellow Jewish citizens with whom we share the same bus and we share the same workplace and the same shopping mall. And their guns will probably be pointed at me and my kids at one of the days, and that's very scary.
And it makes it obviously that much
on the
more.
Other hand, Linda, I just
Yeah,
want
go
to
ahead.
add to that, if that's okay.
No, please.
On the other hand, I think
Please.
I agree with Muhammad, but I do think that because a month and a half have passed since October 7th, we do see some space in the public discourse on the media to talk about what's happening to the Arab society within Israel. So even the first 2, 3, 4 weeks, just nobody talked about it. We knew it's happening because we work in Givat Haviva, and I have, Muhammad and other friends that are telling me what's happening, right? But I couldn't know about it from the Hebrew speaking media, right? Now you do have stories about it, and it's part of the discourse. So I agree with Muhammad that the tension is building. On the other hand, people who does care about those issues, and you have people in Israel cares about the Arab society and equality and democracy. We still exist, right? they do know about it, and it's part of their everyday lives and part of what their concern of their sack of concerns, right? So that's a good.
Take me back to the immediate aftermath of both of you finding out about the attack on October 7th and the first conversation that the two of you had. What was that conversation? If you wouldn't mind, could you share some of that?
Yeah. First of all, October 7th was Saturday, and it was a Jewish holiday. So we were not at work. I woke up with an alarm, like a missile alarm in Tel Aviv, and ran with my daughters to the safe space. And we thought it's just like another round from Gaza. Like we used to it. Like every few months, you get an alarm in Tel Aviv. But then the stories came in, and the stories came in not through the media, like you're used to it, but through your friends calling for help. Like I have a lot of friends in the kibbutzim in the south. Your friends just calling for help on WhatsApp, and it's like you're thinking, okay, the army will be there in like 2 or 3 minutes or 10, I don't know, but it didn't happen. And everything happened on Twitter and WhatsApp. It was this horrible, live stream of your worst nightmare. Immediately we started to like chat on our Givat Haviva team WhatsApp group. And at the beginning, no one understood even what's happening, right? Like we couldn't even imagine it happening. It took us like 24 hours until Sunday morning when we had our first team talk, like we have it every Sunday morning. Remember that in Israel, Sunday is Monday, right? It's the first day of the week. And I think it was a very hard conversation for us because we still didn't understand exactly what happened. And I think, and I want to be honest, I think that of course all of us were shocked and we felt horrible, but it was still hard to talk about, what is Hamas? Like we didn't know all the stories yet. What Hamas was doing, is it a regular terror attack? The first thing that everyone said is like how awful everything is, and everyone felt the same about these kids and women and men and all these citizens that were butchered, but we didn't know how to approach it from like a Jewish and an Arab point of view. It was very confusing at the beginning, and Muhammad's story is even more complex than that.
Well,
so let him.
I went back to
Mohammed.
the chat room. I went back to the chat room. We had Michal to the 7th, and actually, the first reports we were getting is that there was not just incidents in the south, in the surrounding of Gaza, but there were also incidents of attacks on Arab citizens in some of the mixed cities, and we were trying to first of all verify whether those are real attacks to try to prevent panic and intervene as quickly as possible to trying to create calm. That was actually the first message that we were exchanging on the 7th of October. Parallel to that, I was personally fully consumed in trying to find my cousin who was in the party working there as a paramedic. And we knew he got shot, and later we knew he was killed, and that took 6 days until we got the confirmation of his death. So in between personal pain and grief and weight, and in between looking for how do we find the right role for the organization and the right intervention. How do we maintain staff together? How do we conduct a discussion among our staff so that we maintain one unified staff, second staff that can look at their mission and decide what's our role today versus our role yesterday, and yes, we did have, and I think we still have some differences on how do we analyze not actually what happened, because what happened is so obvious. It was so ugly that you don't need to have two opinions. But why it happened, maybe we might differ. But still, we have a mission. As the leading organization and the biggest organization in the field, we can't be busy licking our wounds for too long. We need to be fit to, one, protect what we have and reduce damage. So working with the teachers and the mayors, as Michal mentioned, that we work in regular time to tell them that we are here, that we're present, to try to talk to our supporters and to talk to our board, and so that no one goes to sleep feeling that the sky has collapsed over our concept of shared society. We needed to feed the concept by saying it's still valid, and despite the crisis, despite the challenge. And I think this challenge is still in front of us. We need to keep, one, believing in it, and second, giving the rationale behind this belief and communicating this rationale to our surrounding partners on the field and supporters around the world.
I know one of the things that you're doing as you deal with the on the ground situation that is changing minute by minute, but you're also projecting into the future what the needs will be. I had the privilege of listening in on a webinar that you did a week or so ago, and one of the things that you talked about was preparing the military, members of the military who will be coming back to university after serving in the war. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you're doing and why that is important? Either one of you, whoever.
I think I can start. We always try to think ahead what are the places that's going to be the hardest for Jews and Arabs to live together, to study together, to meet, and where are those places that we need to interfere with? Like we need to help those places so we can prevent violence before it's occurring. Actually, few universities also talk to us, and few colleges also talk to us because, like Muhammad said, it's one of the success stories that we have, right? That the Arab society in Israel, who suffer from a great deal of inequality, is actually, going to universities, to Israeli universities at the same percentage of their percentage in the population, right? 20%. So that's amazing, and it happened in the last 10 years, right? But saying that, we also know that because our education system, our high school education system, which is public, is so damaged, if you look at it from our perspective. So people just do not meet with Arab or Jewish students. Many times, the first time that they meet each other is on campus. And many times the universities are not engaging with that. They're just saying, okay, they're grown-ups. It will be okay. Usually it is okayish, okay? But now we know that the tension is so high, and the year is going to start right after the war, because it was supposed to, the year was supposed to start like a month ago, right? So it's going to start just when the reserved soldiers will come back home, and then they will come post-traumatized and with like specific views right now, no matter what their views usually, but specific views or experiences from, like, let's say, Arab-speaking society in Gaza, which has nothing to do, like Hamas fighters, of course, we need to say they have nothing to do with the Arab population within Israel. There is no connection between the two, okay? And they're going to meet Arab-speaking society in the universities. What is going to happen there? And also from the Arab point of view, or the Arab society in Israel point of view, they are so stressed, they are so afraid of the government, of the state, of the campuses and universities themselves, right? Because they also treated their Arab students in a very harsh way in the last few weeks. What's going to happen there? And we know that we need to prepare the ground. We can do it by talking. It's like creating groups and to have like dialogue sessions between Jewish and Arab students. We can do it with the teams. Also, it's also mix academic teams in our universities, so you can do it there. But also, what we started to do is just to prepare the Arab students, just because we can't talk to most of the Jewish students because they're in the army. But we started to talk with the new Arab students and to prepare them to the experience of studying in a Jewish high education institution. Oh, I'm sorry. There's a missile alarm. I'm leaving you with Muhammad and just need to take my kids to the safe room. Don't
Okay.
worry, everything is okay.
My goodness, please be safe, Michal. Oh boy. Well, here we are with the reality. Yeah.
Indeed. Unfortunately, with Michal, who lives in the middle of Tel Aviv, I live a bit more north, so the sirens are not reaching our town here. We're a bit in a safer zone, but this is part. Almost half of our team experiences this few times a week, and many of our team members have lost family members. One of our students who studies in our international school, an Arab student that his mother is from Gaza, and he lost 27 family members in Gaza. So that's living in a war zone right now.
Oh boy. Mohammed, what do you think that those of us who do not live the existence that you and Michal live and those that you represent, what does the rest of the world not understand that you think it's important for us to know?
Well, I think the most important thing is that the local leadership is not capable of delivering peace. We need peace because October 7th happened because we did few times U-turn, and U-turn that was led by our leadership here that seems to be making good careers out of the conflict. And I think that the global community needs to impose a solution and not wait for a negotiated agreement between Israel and the Palestinians, because we're going backwards instead of going forward. I think that the majority of Israelis and the majority of Palestinians do want peace and are willing to pay the price. And the price is historic giving up of ultimate dreams. But we need help. And the help is not just by pampering our leaders in order not to get them upset. Our leaders are not capable of delivering peace. That's one. The second is when you talk to the human aspect, you talk to the civilians in this, you see a great deal of willingness for people to, move on despite the pain that they have incurred, and despite even, I would say, mistrust of the other. And we see that. We see many people coming with very high level of mistrust, but once you give them 2-3 days of interaction with the other, they start humanizing the other and stop the dehumanization that we build. In Israel, the Jewish and Arab relations are affected mostly by three things. One is the separate housing reality. 92% of Arab citizens live in separate towns and villages, and 92% of the Jewish citizens live in their own separate towns and villages. And in the educational system, it's even worse. There are only 8 mixed schools. One of them is at Givat Haviva, out of 5,000 schools in Israel. All the rest are uninational and not binational. And we all of this, so separate residential reality, separate educational system with the ecosystem of war, that does not produce normal relationship between fellow citizens. you need skills to live in a shared society, and the skills is integration. In America, you had the forced integration of the school system by the busing, which took place in the 60s. I know there's a lot of criticism about the busing, but it did force integration. But that was a top-down effort. We're lacking that top-down willingness of the leaders to enforce this kind of situation. So we're left, organizations like us, like Givat Haviva, we're left with the bottom-up approach of working with few thousands a year when we should be working with few hundreds of thousands every year.
You know, the idea, when you mentioned busing and integration here in the United States, and, you know, we are experiencing our own divisions right now of epic proportions. And it seems that no matter where you look in the world, it all comes down to fear of the other and not understanding and recognizing and knowing who they are, because we are so separated. And once we are able to sit down, be in an environment where we see that at the end of the day, we're all humans and we all pretty much want the same thing. That's where the healing starts. And what you have already shared with us, how after, I think you said after 3 days or so, you see the difference in the young people who come to Givat Haviva and immerse themselves in your program. You were going to say kids, something? Go ahead.
Yeah, many of these kids, you know, after 2-3 days, they don't want to go home. They suddenly discover that what they thought is as the scary enemy that they were taught to fear and avoid and stay away from, can actually share the same dormitory, and they check their body the next morning and there are no new holes. That means that because they were told they will stab you, they will kill you, they will eat from the same plate, and it's not poisoned, and that people do not have the intention of killing you, and they do not have the intention of harming you, but you need that opportunity to humanize the other side instead of just living in segregation and living in fear and listening to being fed the stories of animosity, and where you fit the narrative that you're taught by certain powers that control our life.
You and Michal and your colleagues at Givat Haviva have figured out and are navigating how to have the difficult conversations. What can you share with our audience as they go about trying to have these conversations in whatever sphere, whatever topic it might be, whether it's an Arab and a Jew, whether it's, you know, someone who's Black and someone who's white? Oh my goodness. Michal is joining us again. I was hoping she would be able to. Yay.
She's safe.
Oh my goodness.
Hi.
Oh, hi. No,
hi.
Do not apologize. Yes, thankfully, Michal is safe, but when she joined us again, her internet connection wasn't strong enough to hold. So I finished the conversation with Mohammed and then reconnected with Michal a few days later. So we'll pick it up here with Mohammed and then wrap it up with Michal.
I think that the first component that needs to be in any discussion, whether it is difficult discussion or non-difficult discussion, is honesty and sincerity. So you need to be sincere, you need to be honest, and not come and play a role. So if I bring in a perspective or a feeling into the discussion, I feel that it's important to bring in the sincere perspective and not just come to represent the Arabs or represent the perspective of the Palestinians, but to represent my own perspective and be honest and sincere about it. The second is willingness to listen and the willingness to engage and hear what others have to say, because if you only know how to present your perspective and not listen to someone else's perspective, it becomes a shouting match of the deaf, and you need to hear and comprehend and also be compassionate. And I think the first week we had, we were looking for compassion. I was looking for compassion of my colleagues with my story, and they were demanding my compassion with their story. And if you're not compassionate, really, it's hard to maintain a functioning relationship and a functioning team that can also do work together.
So, Mohammed, I was asking, how are you given everything? How are you doing on a personal level?
And I think that I heard someone saying, "We're fine, but not okay." I think that it will take time for things to even start healing on a personal level, overcome the real fear. I am afraid of this government. This government has extreme racist components that are trying to seize the moment, making all kinds of arrests against Arab citizens that dare to speak out. And I'm kind of a person that usually speaks out his mind. The size of the democracy shrunk, I think, by 50% at least. I hear a lot of friends that are getting warnings and threats from government agencies not to write anything on their Facebook that might be criticism for the government and its actions in Gaza. And I'm afraid for my children who work in Jewish spheres, in Israeli Jewish towns, that one of those people with the guns that they were spread around might, God forbid, pose a threat towards them. The Israeli Jewish society is filled with feelings of revenge as a response to the October 7th events. And now this revenge is expressed in Gaza by excessive use of force. And I'm afraid that as soon as that is over, that revenge mindset will continue against Arab citizens. So for me, it's critical to look for my Jewish counterparts that will stand with us, because if Arab citizens are left alone, we will be sitting ducks in front of the extreme right-wing people in Israel, and who are now armed.
And that makes it that much more difficult, but also, I would imagine, encouraging, if I could use that word, for you to continue the work that you do with Givat Haviva. It must
Well,
give
I'm not sure
you,
if
I
the
would
word,
imagine, a sense of purpose and
I mean,
a
I
reason
think
to
it's
get
more
out
of
of
an
bed in the
incentive.
morning and feel hope. Go ahead.
I think it's more an incentive than a purpose or encouragement. It's fear. That's the fear factor that is also driving me, and not just the ideology of peace, but real fear that things can get much, much worse. And I want to protect myself and my family and my community. And at the same time, I believe that interdependency and cooperation is the fastest and best way to do it, because all those that say peace doesn't work and peace education doesn't work, well, what did work? Did the last confrontation between Israel and Hamas work? Did the last confrontation between Hezbollah and Israel work? Did the last Palestinian Intifada work? We've been in cycles of wars. Every 3-4 years, we have an eruption. Which one of them actually worked? None of them worked. The only thing that we did not really try on mass scale is proper peace engagement, whether it is top down or bottom up. And so I believe intellectually that this is the path that we need to go through, but I also feel emotionally that my both me feelings of real capacity to be compassionate to my fellow Jewish citizens and feel that I can be partner with them, but also I have the other feeling, which is fear of their extremes, because their extremes, we've seen what they've done last year in Palestinian towns like Hawara, where they attack Palestinian, and how they last week they are attacking Palestinian farmers that the only thing that they did was to go pick their olive trees. And they attack them because they want to steal their olive orchards. And if those guys are left without an alternative, and the alternative has to be peaceful coexistence between Jews and Arabs. If we take coexistence off the table, if we take peace off the table, I'm going to be in the losing end. We see how Gaza is being demolished, and I don't want my town or more other Palestinian and Arab towns to get demolished. So it's also not just my belief in peace, but it's also my fear of the alternative that is driving me.
Okay, so as we wrap this up, I want to try and leave our audience with some sense of hope. The whole reason that I wanted to have this conversation with you and Michal is because there's so much noise obviously on both sides, and the issue is so difficult for everyone involved. But I take a glimmer of hope in the knowledge that you and Michal and your colleagues are working together in the midst of this firestorm, in the midst of this war, and are trying to find your way toward a humane solution for all involved. So what would be your final words of hope, if you will, as we wrap up our conversation?
Well, peace is doable. And I know maybe we cannot bring the peace as what we call capital P peace, but we can bring pieces of peace. We can build small islands of peace and cooperation. It's happening actually not just in my relationship with Michal and our team at Givat Haviva. If you go to an Israeli hospital today, you'll find that 24% of the doctors are Arab. If you go to a pharmacy, 55% of the pharmacists are Arab. 50% of the taxi drivers, 50% of the bus drivers, and 50% of the truck drivers. And they're there today in their shifts, doing their work. The concept of cooperation and interdependency, even at tense times, is still there. There are many people that are trying to protect that accumulated success in staying humans, which actually is exactly what my cousin Awad proved. He proved in his action when he refused to evacuate and stayed there in the scene of the party on the October 7th, that he wanted to protect his humanity until his last breath. He died with bandages in his hands, bandages he didn't have time to put them to stop the wounds of some of the people that he was treating. And if we just remember that we have a humanity that we need to tap into, we have collegial relationship that we need to maintain, we have respect that we need to maintain, that wishing that the other doesn't exist is not an option. The other is here to stay, and we need to find the proper mechanisms of working together. Now, on person-to-person level, I think it's easy to assume that it works. We need the governments to follow. And if they don't follow, we need your governments to tell them to follow this direction.
Mohammed Darashi, thank you so very much. Michal Sela, I'm sorry that we weren't able to have her for the end of this conversation, but I'm so enormously grateful for the work that the two of you are doing and that you have taken the time to share your stories with our audience. Thank you so much. And please, please, please be safe.
Thank you very much, Linda, for having us. And thanks to your listeners also for giving us the time.
Okay. Michal, I'm so happy to see you again. It's been a few days since we did our first recording, and real life got in the way there for a second, huh? But you're okay. And that's the main thing. Your family,
Yeah,
everybody's good?
yeah, thank you so much.
Yes. So I just wanted to continue the conversation that we were having. And one of the things that we were talking about, I think I had just asked Mohammed the question, basically, what is it that you want the world to know? Those of us who are not living your existence, that don't have to deal with sirens going off, every few days and going to a safe room, and just what it's like to live in your shoes right now. What is it that you think is important for the rest of the world to know?
I think, first of all, to know that reality is really complex and that people are more than their national identity. So, in a national group, you have all kinds of opinions, you have all kinds of people. Some of them are fighting for years for peace and understanding. And nobody, like, no, not a single soul on this earth deserves to be murdered or raped or being kidnapped or being bombed and killed because of their leaders or because of the people who are controlling their territory. And I feel I can say from, like, I studied abroad. Okay, I studied in Oxford, in the UK, and I see how my class is dealing with it, and the kind of things that are allowing themselves to say without ever experiencing a situation of war or, like, if being afraid for the lives of your kids. And I feel that people should, if you're not really, really engaged with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, just stay human and say that every life matter, right? And every kid matter, and it's okay just to say that, but do not engage with things that you just know nothing about.
I'm so glad you made that point. Social media is a brutal place to be. In many situations, and particularly in this one, if you do choose to engage. I have not engaged on social media at all when it comes to this topic of this war. And I gave a lot of thought to the podcast and really wanting to have a conversation that is centered on how we look at this as a human issue and look at it from that standpoint of trying to find some commonality. And that's why when I found out about Givat Haviva and the work that you're doing, I thought, okay, that's how I can talk about this. Because the last thing I want to do is to invite any sort of extreme points of view. And, people feel like they have to take sides. And I love that you said, be on the side of humanity, be on the side of being human, be on the side of solutions. And don't just knee-jerk react to things that you know nothing about, and therefore are causing more harm and more pain to those who are experiencing it. So thank you for offering that. The other question that I also asked Mohammed was to talk about what you have learned in the work that you do with the Arab community in Israel in bringing people together about how to have the difficult conversations, no matter what the topic might be. What can you share with our audience?
So I actually heard what Muhammad answered, and I agree with him. I will also add that you need a lot of patience, and you need to remember who are you talking to. So I can even share something from how we at Givat Haviva cope within our team, not even like having a difficult conversation with other people in other communities, but among ourselves we had to also deal with that, and it wasn't easy. Like I don't think it's very honest to say, yeah, we live in this beautiful harmony and everything is okay within the Arab and Jewish team of Givat Haviva. It's not. It's a lot of work, and we're working on it. But I think that the first thing we need to remember is that if you are talking to someone that is your friend in normal days, and suddenly you have this extreme situation or a very very hard difficult and difficult conversation, you need to remember that the things that he or she are saying right now are still being said by them. So you know them. So if they say something that really, pushes you, or you like feel you need to react in a very extreme way to what they're saying, just you need to take a breath and like to breathe and just understand that okay, it's still them. They still love you, they still see you, they still understand you, but maybe they didn't say it the way they should say it, or maybe they're in a very difficult situation, but you need to see the person, not only the words that are saying, right? We are a whole we are all whole persons, like people, and sorry for my English, it's very late.
It's okay.
We are whole people, and we remain ourselves even when we're traumatized. Okay, and it's very important to remember that when you're talking to your friends or colleagues.
And that speaks to the importance of getting to know the other, which is the whole crux of the work that you do at Givat Haviva is, bringing Arabs and Jews together who, in many cases, before they have entered your program, have never interacted before. And so it's the saying goes, it's really hard to hate up close. When you get to know someone, it's much more difficult to look at them as the other. So I love that you made that point. And so as we are having this conversation today, since our last conversation of a few days ago, there is a glimmer of hope that some of the hostages, 50, will be released. We're waiting for that to happen now.
It's supposed to start tomorrow.
Yes, yes. So with that as a backdrop, and with all of this as a backdrop, I want to know, how are you as a human right now? How are you doing? How are you even coping with all of the emotional roller coaster of what is happening in your country?
I think I'm very lucky because I can cope through my work, right? I can cope with my Arab and Jewish team, with my Arab friends. I can cope because I can understand that although I don't feel it right now, I know that there is some hope. However, I feel that I have never been that afraid in my life, especially as a mom and as a woman. Like, I'm terrified from the fact that sexual violence is now part of the Israeli and Palestinian conflict, because it wasn't really a part of our everyday lives.
You have girls.
Yes,
How
two.
how old are they?
So 18 months and 4 years old.
Oh my
And you
goodness.
have like 4 years old girls now in captivity in Gaza, and they look exactly like my daughter. So it's like, it's just a kind of fear that you can't really cope with as a woman, especially in Israel, when it's like, our saying is like, if you have a girl, then, in a way, it's safer because they're not going to fight in the army. Although they can now also women fight in the army, but usually they tend to do it less. And now I'm like, okay, maybe it's very dangerous to be a woman in Israel, and maybe we just never thought that can happen. Like, I admit it, I didn't think these kind of atrocities can happen even by Hamas. It wasn't in our, you know, in our, different possibilities that we imagined to ourselves. And I think this fear is going to, unfortunately, be with us for at least few generations, which is horrible because the amount of suffering and the amount of chaos that we now have in our own society is horrible. And also, I think everything goes with a lot of anger towards our leadership and our government, and the fact that people were not protected by what we used to call the strongest army in the Middle East or in the world, I don't know. People were not protected within the legitimate borders of Israel, but they are protected in what we see as the not very legitimate parts of Israel, the settlements. And I think that that's going to take us many, many years to heal from that anger.
One of the things that Mohammed said is, and you have alluded to this as well, that the leadership is not up to creating peace, that this is going to have to come from the bottom up as opposed to the top down. And that's the approach that Givat Haviva is taking. You are literally doing this human to human, one interaction at a time. That's what I'm trying to do with this podcast, human to human, one interaction at a time. I guess I'm trying to just get you to offer us some final words of hope to get to where we want to go. I love the terminology of something else that he said, which is that we're seeking pieces of peace. It's like one little piece at a time to get to a broader peace. What would you like to leave us with?
I think that in a way, going from bottom up is understanding that something is not working from the top right now. And it doesn't mean that we don't believe in structural change, because structural change is really, really important. It's the only way to actually change the way we live. But because we know how democracy works, and we are still living in a democracy, thanks God. We, the people, are going to change this region. And I know it will happen because we all want to live, and we all want our kids to live. And we all understand that the horrible leadership that we have, and also the horrible, terrible, terrorizing leadership that people in Gaza have, will not survive forever. And I think that in Israel, of course, it's easier because we can vote. And I think that even if we'll talk in a year or 18 months from now, the situation will be different, because democracy is also about bottom up and not only about top down. That's what's beautiful about it. And if you look at Israel right now, Israel is being managed by the people of Israel, not by the government. We don't see them. We almost don't see them on ground as citizens. We don't feel them. There are no ministers in funerals. They don't come and meet the people that are being hosted in Givat Haviva or in the hotels that are, refugees within their own country. They don't. But we have each other. And I think we're proving that this country is more than its leadership.
Well, I think that's a beautiful place to end our conversation. Michal, I cannot thank you enough for making the time to have this conversation. And again, I'm so glad that you are safe. I plan to stay in touch with you, and I'm getting your newsletters now. I feel like I'm part of your community, and I want to continue to help you spread the word about this just massively important work that you are doing. And please know that you have a friend in me, and I'll do everything that I can to support you and Mohammed and Givat Haviva. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. It means a lot. Thank you.
I am enormously grateful to Michal Sela and Mohammed Daroushi, not only for sharing their stories and perspective with all of us, but more important, for the incredibly important work that they are doing on the ground in Israel. As they say, working from the bottom up, human to human, reminding us of our common humanity. To learn more about Givat Haviva and support their work, just go to the show notes at ourvoicesmatterpodcast.com. And if this conversation resonated with you, and I hope it did, please share with your friends and invite them to subscribe and join the Our Voices Matter community. Thanks so much, everybody. Be safe, be kind. I'll see you next time.